لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة لمن كان يرجو الله واليوم الآخر وذكر الله كثيرا.
Bismillah, all praise be to Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate, and peace and blessings be upon our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's my pleasure again to welcome you to your program with the Prophet. May Allah make us with the Prophet in this life and in the hereafter. Again, we'll be looking in this episode in how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam treated his companions before becoming companions and after becoming companions. Today we'll be focusing on the story of one who was called Shaitan Quraysh, the Satan of Quraysh, because of great enmity, because of his evil personality, and how that man turned to be among the closest companions of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The story started after the Battle of Badr, when the polytheists of Mecca were defeated at Badr and came back to Mecca with some of the prominent figures of Mecca. The devilish figures of Mecca were killed at the Battle of Badr. 70 were taken as prisoners of war, and the rest went back to Mecca with defeat and scars and wounds that kept reminding them of the humiliating defeat at the hands of the Prophet ﷺ in Badr, though they were the ones who were acting as aggressors. Among those was today's or this episode's figure. His name was Omair ibn Wahb min Jumah, and this is from a tribe in Quraysh called Jumah. Omair left his son as a prisoner at the hand of the Prophet ﷺ in Medina, and his heart was full of hatred for the Prophet, to the extent that he would love to kill him and to have, as he would think, the pleasure, of being called the killer of the Prophet, the assassin of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As he was thinking about that, moving around the Kaaba, looking at the idols that helped them with nothing, he met another fierce enemy of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whose father was killed at the Battle of Badr as well, and who was thinking of having revenge in the most devilish way against the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They were complaining to each others, remembering the sad day of Badr. And he said, when he met Safwan was among the wealthiest. His father, Umayyah ibn Khalaf, who was killed in Badr, was among the most hateful, heartless persecutors of the companions of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and especially among them Bilal, who was one of his slaves. Safwan said, I wish we could kill this man. Then Umair took the opportunity, said, if it were not for the debt I had to pay and have many children and nobody's taking care of them, I would go and kill Muhammad. And I have an excuse to go to Medina because my son is there and I wanted to go and ransom him. Safwan took the opportunity. He wouldn't let this moment go. He said, I'll take care of your debt. I'm responsible for your children. I'll help you ransom your son. But go and go and assassinate Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So they planned this criminal journey, a criminal journey and plan to kill the Prophet. He gave him the money, he gave him poisoned sword, he gave him the camel, he gave him all he needed, then he went to Medina. As Umair reached Medina, Umar saw him and he said, "This is the enemy of Allah. This is the devil of Quraysh. He has come to do something devilish. He is not coming for something good." Immediately he asked the companions to protect the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and went to Umair and held him by his garment. He said, "What do you want to do?" He said, "I came to ransom my son. I am coming here to ransom my son," with an innocent voice. They took him to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Umar was watching closely. If he would make any movement, Umar will just take his head out of his body. The Prophet ﷺ, when he came to the Prophet, he said, "Imta samahan," this is sabahan, this is the greetings of Jahiliyyah, good morning. The Prophet said, "Allah gave us a better salutation, better greeting, Assalamu alaikum." Then he said, "What do you want to come for? What are you coming for, Umair?" He said, "Oh, Muhammad, you know my son is with you. I want to ransom my son." He said, "Why you want to come here to ransom your son with the sword held at your neck?" He said, "These swords did not help us at the Battle of Badr." He was a cunning person. Then the Prophet ﷺ, "I know what you came for, Umar." He said, "What I came for? I came for this reason." He said, "No." And he told him about the story that took place in Mecca next to the Kaaba, along with him and Safwan ibn Umayyah. Umair was astonished. He said, "Muhammad, by Allah, nobody was there but me and Safwan. And that was top secret, that I didn't even tell my own family members in Mecca where I was going or for what purpose. By Allah, you are a prophet of Allah. I bear witness that you are the prophet. There is no God but Allah, and you are the prophet of Allah." Subhanallah. In 1 second, from a fierce enemy of the Prophet ﷺ, his prophet, to a truthful follower. And he said, "Oh Allah, oh Prophet of Allah, I've been doing a lot of evil in Mecca against you and your companions. By Allah, I replaced that with doing whatever I could do to serve Allah, you and Islam and your companions." The Prophet ﷺ asked him to stay in Mecca, in Medina, but he said, "No, I want to go to Mecca and declare to everybody that I've become a Muslim. I fear none but Allah." So the Prophet ﷺ gave him back his son, and he went back to Mecca. At that moment in Mecca, Safwan was saying to everybody, "You are waiting for good news." Everybody's asking, "What are these good news?" He said, "This will be a surprise, a big surprise, a surprise that you have never heard of your life, and Arabs will never heard of all their lives." But Umair failed Safwan. Umair turned against Safwan. The news came to Mecca that Umair accepted Islam. Safwan felt desperate, frustrated. How could it be? And he was among the people who first met Umair and was insulting him. Umair told him, "Safwan, you better know who you are and what you should be looking for, rather than declaring your enmity against the truth." Anyway, long story, we'll make it short. It was the liberation time of Mecca when the Prophet ﷺ and his companions came to Mecca. And Safwan was among those people whose blood was shed was asked to be shed by the Prophet ﷺ. If they were caught at any time, they will be killed. So Safwan realized that, and he ran away to Jeddah, to the shore. He wanted to take a ship and flee wherever to Abyssinia or to any place on earth, running away from the Prophet ﷺ. But his friend Omair, who was taught by the Prophet mercy, kindness, even against his enemies, he said, I will not let Safwan, O Prophet of Allah, Safwan ran away from you. Would you forgive him? I intercede to forgive him. Please do forgive him. He said, I will forgive him for the sake of Allah and for your sake. Take my garment and sometimes hit, cover, and follow Ammar to Safwan. This is the sign that I have forgiven him, so he would accept you. He ran after him and he met with Safwan at the shore of the sea, here at this town in Jeddah, about to leave. And he said, Safwan, come. I have come to you from the most merciful man on earth, from the Prophet of Allah. He forgave you for all the bad deeds that you have done, for the devilish plans that you have done against him and his companions, for all the wars that you waged against him and his companions. Come with me. He said, are you truthful? He said, yes. This is his head cover and come his imamah, okay, or turban, and come with me. They came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said, oh Muhammad, I'll ask you to give me 2 months. Either I accept Islam or I leave this town. He said, Safwan, I'll give you 4 months. But Safwan was watching those companions of Prophet Muhammad sallam behaving in a very interesting way, a way that he couldn't really imagine. He saw how the Prophet sallam was loving, merciful, compassionate, treating people not as a king, as a victorious king or a fighter or a knight, but a humble human being who cared for them. Only a few days and he accepted Islam. Anyway, Safwan was turned from a fierce enemy to Islam and to the Prophet, to one of the great leaders of the liberation of the whole world, among the great companions of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam treated his enemies, and how his fierce enemies became among his closest friends. This will make the end of this episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hoping to see you in other episode with the Prophet and his companions.
لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة لمن كان يرجو الله واليوم الآخر وذكر الله كثيرا.